Many cities in the US have really lonely rail transit systems. I'm talking about light rail, streetcar, and even commuter rail networks that aren't really networks at all because they're only made up of one line. Take Austin, Texas, for example. America's 13th largest city has one hybrid rail line and one Amtrak station, and they don't even connect with each other. The same goes for Tucson, Arizona, with its one tram line and one Amtrak station. You can copy and paste that with a bunch of big cities in the US. Cincinnati, Kansas City, Albuquerque, Buffalo, Oklahoma City, the list goes on. Passenger rail in these places is extremely limited, with a streetcar line or two usually only running throughout downtown, and Amtrak trains only arriving and departing like 2 or 3 times per day. You can't expect passenger rail to be well ridden if networks aren't really networks, but singular lines. I've ridden all kinds of trains throughout this country. As far as I'm concerned, any ride on a passenger rail system in America is noteworthy for one reason or another. They're kinda like rare Pokemon. But a train that literally connects to nothing else, not Amtrak, not a streetcar, not so much as a plane train, well, that's pretty much unheard of. If the US federal government funded passenger rail projects on the level of China, there wouldn't be such thing as America's loneliest railroad. But there is, and it's located in Nashville, Tennessee. This is Nashville's WeGo Star Train, a true anomaly in the American passenger rail landscape. When it opened in 2006, it was the first passenger train service of any kind for Nashville since the discontinuation of Amtrak's original Floridian train in 1979. The WeGo Star is made up of 4 rebuilt ex-Amtrak EMD F40PH locomotives and 8 former Chicago Metro coaches. The coaches are bi-level, with seating on an upper and a lower level, which is pretty unique. I hadn't taken a journey on a bi-level train since my visit to the San Francisco Bay Area on Caltrain last year. This train, Nashville's WeGo Star, is America's loneliest railroad for a few reasons. First, and unlike the cities I've mentioned thus far, its single-line service doesn't operate anywhere near an Amtrak station. Nashville just doesn't have one. The closest Amtrak station to the WeGo Star train is in Memphis, some 200 miles away. After that, the next closest train stations of any kind are in Atlanta, Birmingham, and Indianapolis, all well over 200 miles away, respectively. The WeGo Star is more isolated from another passenger rail service than pretty much anywhere else in the continental US. But the other part of the equation that makes this train America's loneliest railroad is that it's also America's least ridden passenger train. WeGo Star only sees about 500 riders every day. An exact number is actually pretty hard to find because WeGo Star only operates on weekdays, with a total of 4 full-service round-trip trains and 2 limited-service round-trip trains per day. A one-way ticket on the WeGo Star is $5.25, except at Donaldson Station, where a ticket costs just $2. The WeGo Star train was supposed to be a proof of concept when it opened back in 2006. Something successful and profitable enough to fund the creation of several other lines across the metro area. But that never happened. This train was doomed from the start. This wasn't built to be a system. Lonely trains do not work. The government doesn't build one interstate highway going through Houston. Instead, they build a sprawling system of interstate highways. The whole idea of establishing a single rail line and hoping for the best is in itself flawed. Trains are not supposed to be lonely. They only work when they're connected to other trains, which connect to other trains, which connect to streetcars, trams, bikeways, and neighborhoods built around people and transit, and not cars. All of Nashville's metro area, including the land around the stations, is built around the automobile. Of course, it didn't used to be. Once upon a time, Nashville had a wonderful streetcar network that fed development within downtown and around the urban core. On top of that, for most of the 19th and 20th centuries, Nashville had many intercity passenger trains flowing in and out of town. All it takes is a visit to Nashville's Victorian-era Union Station to see what I mean. It's a monument of Gilded Age passenger rail in Nashville, appearing almost as if it was ripped from the urban fabric of Edinburgh and placed in the middle of downtown country town. Unfortunately, our lonely purple train doesn't terminate here, but instead at a much smaller station along Nashville's historic riverfront. This station, the western terminus of the WeGo Star train, was built in 2004 and designed to look like an old mid-19th century train station. When you think about Nashville's place in this country, both geographically and culturally, it's easy to be upset at the thought of what could have been. The city is a near-perfect regional crossroads, and if American passenger rail was allowed to evolve naturally from this as a starting point, Music City would have surely been one of America's great high-speed rail hubs by now. The idea that America, and Nashville specifically, is more free because it left this behind for this is the greatest scam in American history. You aren't free to drive in America, you're forced to. Forced to spend time in traffic, pay for gas, insurance, a lease, a loan. The relegation of passenger rail in America isn't just about transportation, it's also about how our cities are built around the car. Which brings me back to America's loneliest railroad. I rode the WeGo Star train its entire 32 miles in length, from Lebanon Station to Riverfront Station, and back the other way. The truth is, all 6 of the stations in between the two termini are exactly the same. A park and ride with absolutely no amenities, built in the middle of nothing, surrounded by rural small towns east of Nashville. None of the stations connect to a town square or even a place with proper urban planning and development, besides the one in downtown Nashville, I suppose. But the problem with building around these stations is that apartments still have parking minimums. Almost everybody still has to drive to do pretty much everything they need to do. Because, again, this isn't a network, it's a line that runs 4.5 times a day. America's loneliest railroad in Nashville only gets sadder when you compare its unlived potential to its lived potential out in Europe. For some perspective, the Nashville metro area population is about equal in size to the Amsterdam metro area population. In Amsterdam, a train from Central Station to the city of Leiden, 30 miles south, takes 35 minutes on a fully electric train. The ride from Nashville to Lebanon takes about 55 minutes. Like I mentioned earlier, there are 6 full-service trains with 2 limited round trips per day, for a total of 8 trains. From Amsterdam to Leiden, there are, and I'm not joking here, 138 trains per day, in each direction. This is precisely why it's important to show you these comparisons. My job is to persuade Americans across the political landscape that no, it's not crazy to suggest that there should be over 100 trains per day between Nashville and Franklin, Tennessee, a city which is more comparable in distance and population to Leiden. The other problem with the WeGo Star train is that it operates on track owned by a freight rail company, rather than track owned by the city or the state, or even a different passenger railroad. If the state of Tennessee and the federal government were serious about passenger rail as an actual tool for structural, societal change, Nashville could have been able to build a multi-layered passenger rail network. It would have been able to build a 21st century copy of its 1913 streetcar system, while simultaneously carving out new, fully electric light rail and commuter lines using eminent domain. If you're thinking that politics makes this fundamentally impossible, you should know that Japan is one of the most conservative countries in the first world, yet they have way more of this stuff than almost any other place in the world. In the same breath, California, apparently one of the most liberal and progressive governments in the world, has been trying and failing to build high-speed rail for 2 decades. It's astonishing how many rules and how much bureaucracy high-speed rail has to go through in this country, while at the same time, AI data centers and interstate highways never have to go through this much scrutiny. 51% of American voters voted for Joe Biden in 2020. 50% of American voters voted for Donald Trump in 2024. But 86% of Americans support a stronger passenger rail system, and the younger you go, the higher that number gets. Other first world countries prioritize passenger rail because it is, by definition, more free than this. As far as these places are concerned, better car-free mobility is a human right. It's safer, cleaner, and less expensive to maintain, but still, this is what most of America looks like today. Even in a big city like Nashville. There are no sidewalks here because you aren't free or safe to walk. Using your body as a means of mobility isn't even really an option. Instead, you have to spend a third of your paycheck on a car because without it, you won't be able to make enough money to pay for that car. Speaking as someone to the political right of every other urbanist on YouTube, if you really want to own the libs out in California, build stuff like this. Better, faster, and cheaper than them. There would be no bigger own to California if Texas built a high-speed triangle. Instead of wetting yourself about how many jobs defense tech factories and AI data centers could bring, cities like Nashville and states like Tennessee should focus on job growth in sectors that actually benefit the future of humanity, instead of dooming it. Nashville is one of the fastest growing metros in the US. We can put people to work building and managing stuff like this. New American railroads, new urbanism built from the ashes of mid-century decay. This is how you fight inflation. The day when high-speed, intercity, and local trains are faster, cheaper, safer, and more accessible than flying and driving is the day the cost of everything goes down. Oil and gas, insurance, housing, car maintenance. And if your city is built around people and not cars, you won't even need to spend money on those things anymore. Owning a car is silly in a place that looks like this. Amsterdam's metro is barely larger than Nashville's metro, but they couldn't look any different. You probably noticed by now that there is no video to make about America's loneliest railroad, because a lonely railroad is an oxymoron. I rode this train as a memory to look back on one day when things are better. When Gen Z and Gen Alpha take office and we're actually able to build things like this in America. If you ever randomly find yourself in Lebanon, Tennessee for the day, take the train into Nashville for a change. You'll have to make a day out of it like I did, but it's totally worth it. I recommend a visit to Fort Nashboro, an early morning walk along Broadway, and then grabbing a bike and riding over the John Siegenthaler pedestrian bridge to East Nashville. There's actually a surprising amount of great bike infrastructure over there. Bike share is definitely your friend if you're exploring Nashville car-free on the WeGo train. Since the pandemic, WeGo Star's ridership has fallen off a cliff and never fully recovered. Again, this is a commuter train by definition. There are no trains on the weekends. And even as a commuter train, it's pretty limited. This isn't the fault of passenger rail as a means of mobility. It's the fault of politicians who remain allergic to properly funding it. If you agree, be sure to like and subscribe. It helps the channel reach as many people as possible. But anyway, I'll see you next week, right here, from 4th place.